was just thinking, one way to understand morality is money. Money is a really good way to understand morality. Like when you use, for example, a banknote, most people, we mostly think that it has lots of lots of value, and it doesn't really. The paper is printed on has no value, not a lot of value. Certainly not a lot of value compared to the value, the symbolic value that it has, which people are prepared to pay for it in terms of resources or goods or whatever. So that's a really good way to understand it. Like you have a physical thing that acquires a symbolic meaning, and there are many things in life where many instances in which we think that we are dealing with nature and we're dealing with physical stuff, physical qualities, but in fact we're talking about symbolic qualities, and the primary case in which this happens is with your parents. Your parents use the words most likely mom and dad, and which come from, the main meaning that they have is natural. They're talking about a biological quality, that they had sex, and from that action came out a baby, and that was you, and so they're your parents and so on. But that's just a natural thing that we describe. But then there is a social thing that's put on top of that fact, which is symbolic, and it concerns what people have to do, what your parents as parents in their society have to do with you, and so what their role is and so on. And this changes depending on the place. So the fact of parenthood, the biological fact of parenthood does not change, but the social fact changes. So the social fact is symbolic, and the biological fact is not symbolic. It is symbolic when we try to explain it. We can put a symbol to it so that we can talk about it, but that's not the same thing as putting a symbol to it that tells you what you have to do about it. So there's a difference between describing something or prescribing something, between merely talking about something and thinking about it and just trying to discuss it and understand it. That's one thing. Another thing is to tell people what to do and to command people on what they must do. These two things get confused. So then, people think about being a parent. They immediately, they have all this idea that they're talking about something natural, when they're mostly talking about something social. Same thing with money. With money, most of us think that we're using something natural that has value in and of itself. Well, actually, it only has value because people believe that it has value, because it is symbolic like that. But if you just, any government can suddenly declare that it has no value, or that it, either that it has or that it hasn't. These things change, depending on the context. You can declare something to have symbolic value or not. And this is something that we're beginning to realize, because there are monies appearing on the internet that people are giving value to. There's all kinds of financial products that people give value to. And that just happens from the wishes of people. You know, they choose to value a certain money over another. And you know, in the past you had to be a national and you had to be in a certain societal context to give to perceive that money, you know, the money of your country has value. But now you don't have to be in a country. Now you can just trade these things on the internet and realize the fact that the value of these things is basically just people, what people want. So same as valuing your football team, you know, whatever, you know, it's the same kind of tribalistic phenomenon. So, you know, beginning to realize that the difference between what is natural and what is social, which is a new phenomenon, really. I mean, we're sort of getting out of society and seeing it from outside. So, and as I said, that begins with understanding that your parents or you as a parent, this thing that you believe is very natural is in fact symbolic, and all the moral value that it has is a symbol. And you know, not to take away what is natural about it, and not to take away, I don't mean to take away the emotional part which is very important and very, very meaningful in a natural way. But there's a whole bunch of stuff on top that we're beginning to question, and there's a lot of trauma that's coming out with people, a lot of, you know, people having crisis of identity, people having crisis with their families not working, you know, people separated, having children and not being able to stay together, and all this kind of thing. Mental illness, you know, more diagnosis and more experts going crazy trying to understand what's going on with people that who are developing all kinds of, quote, illnesses, you know. The categorization of people, the emphasis and the obsession with whether you call somebody this or you call them that, and this is all symbols, you know. We're slowly getting to understand what they are and how they influence our perception of reality.